And we are recording. So just to recap a little bit from last time, guys, obviously we went over some two-dimensional stuff. We went over, how to break down a certain component and at least start to wire cut it at two different ways. And just some of the interesting things that we can do to even make it a little bit more clear, such as, fillet edge and whatnot. However, if you were looking for this file, you may have noticed it's on Canvas under the assignment itself, right? So if you're looking for that 3DM file, I think it's about 25 megabytes. You're more than welcome to explore this model for yourself and to build on top of it. Last time we didn't really get to show this. This is kind of what I built the day before, but just showing you that of course we can isolate this model and we don't have to build the whole thing. In some cases, yeah, it probably makes some sense for some of the projects to get kind of a whole half, if you will, but it doesn't have to be even the whole half of the building. In fact, it could be more like a sliver, like are you guys familiar with pound cake? It's like my favorite cake ever. But you don't eat the whole thing, but you could chop it any way you like, right? You don't necessarily have, when you cut that bundt cake in half, you don't necessarily have to keep half. You can just get that sliver in the middle, right, to say the very least. However, as you can see, if you build a digital model, there's opportunities for extra credit. Keep in mind that, guys, constantly in architecture, don't get me wrong, I know a lot of us are just trying to meet the requirements of the project, but if you're, to be fair, I have a story to where my first professor at Texas Tech, he only gave 1 A out in the studio, right? And I definitely made sure that I got all A's in all of my studios. It was my favorite class, for sure. And I was, by the end of it. This was the same studio, by the way, that he tore off my drawings off the wall and told me to learn Rhino or get out. And I did. So you can too. And to be fair, I did it with just Professor YouTube. So, there's a little bit more hand-to-hand, at least a relationship in terms of trying to teach you this digital stuff. However, at the end of the day, guys, you're gonna have to practice. It's like a piano. Some of you guys realize that you can install this software on your home computer, right? So for instance, that link that Juan gives us, by the way, that's a link to where it works on any computer you sign into. So potentially you can sign it, you could put it on your laptop, your desktop, your friend's desktop, anything, right? As long as you have that email link, you're good, right? At least for the duration of San Antonio College. But that being the case, obviously, love that Professor Longoria is going over Make 2D with you guys. So he probably went over that relationship, how it separates the layers. You can maintain the layers. Definitely crucial, right? Because honestly, what you'll do with your tracing is take your tracing and put it in Illustrator, just like that. And to tell you the truth, I find it to be actually a really nice challenge to try and mimic drafting with this technology. In fact, I think that's where it actually works the best. When you can fool Professor Escamilla and Bohuslav that it was digital at all in the first place. And you'd be surprised, it has happened a couple of times where he goes, oh wow, this is a great analog drawing. I go, sir, it's digital. And he goes, no way, right? But literally that is kind of the goal that you should kind of have in the back of your mind. It's not a new tool. I mean, don't get me wrong, it does different things than your drafting table, but I hope that you're seeing that I stay organized just like I would on a drafting table. It's just like an infinite drafting table. And when I build my model, I still build it flat, right? I mean, as if I was building it on a table. So what I'm trying to say is it doesn't have to be super confusing. And my thing messed up, so let's set that back. Anyway, however, I do want to make some changes and say that if you do build a digital model, it is totally extra credit. However, if you want a 3D print, you kind of need at least that 3D piece, right? And it makes a lot of sense to relate it to the rest of the parts of what you're potentially going to build. In my case, let's resituate here. There we go. But just to recap from last time, basically all I did left over from last time was just build some boxes and wire cut them. And to be fair, that's definitely enough for me to start to go, hey, well, how do I make that? Well, to be fair, I can get all my pieces, and the reason why I would even build this model is to derive some pieces. So the first thing I want to talk about is, well, if you want to use the laser cutter, or you want to print these out and make a template, right? So let's go ahead and make a template. In my case, I don't want to ruin my model, just in case I need a different view of it. So I'm going to go ahead and make a copy and start separating the pieces that I need. That way I could even calculate potentially how much material of something I actually need to have as well. So I'll take these pieces and I'm just going to decide that I'm going to make those out of, I don't know, basswood, right? Me and my partner decided that we want these out of basswood. And to be fair, I could just count them as well. I guess I don't really need to take them out like that. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So that's pretty sweet. I can take all of those and immediately take a situation, go to the top view, and make 2D. I mean, don't get me wrong, I guess I could draw a rectangle as well. But let's say I had something crazy in that floor, or a hole, or maybe a threshold, or maybe stairs are coming through. So maybe, obviously, I just want to make 2D. When you make 2D, of course, it actually goes back to your central point, which is fine too. But now we have that piece, and now I can potentially laser cut it. To be fair, what's nice about the laser cutter is it cuts edge to edge. So potentially if you had something like this, it's going to cut just fine. In fact, it'll cut the most efficiently that we could possibly think of, right? With that edge right next to the other edge. Let's continue, right? Where's another piece that I could potentially 3D print, or even print out this template so that I could build it easier with some dowels, right? I think actually one of the pieces that I'm focusing on is definitely this piece, right? And maybe even the links of these pieces, right? So for instance, maybe I'll take all 3, just knowing that I'm gonna have 3 links in there. And I'm gonna multiply them as well. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. So again, I'm gonna take that piece, make 2D. And I know it almost even sounds kind of like, well, why would you do all that, right? Again, so I can make a template for myself and my partner, especially, I don't know how you guys are divvying up kind of what you want to do. To be fair, there's a lot of different groups that kind of like, I'll do the model, I'll do the drawings, done, right? Some groups are like, no, I want both of our hands in both parts of the model or both parts of the drawing. Awesome. Well, one of us does a section, one of us does a floor plan, and we'll put those 2 files together. To be fair, that's actually pretty easy. You just go to File, Import, and import a 3DM file, right? As long as they're the same Rhino 7 and Rhino 8, you should be okay, right? And I can go over that as well. However, once I'm making 2D, again, I'm basically just getting a flat version, if you will. Whether I need to laser cut it or whether I potentially want to just print it out, I'll need essentially the same things. But what's nice is now I have these on a sheet of paper potentially, and I can scale them all together as well. I could even 3D print them if I just really wanted to make some kind of intricate template, which, to be fair, maybe you might not need for this project, but is definitely good practice. However, that's looking pretty good. So it gets me maybe my basswood pieces and the links of, I can line up my dowels now and just cut them. Line them up, cut them, right? And I could definitely even tell myself, hey, I need 6 sets of these, right? So 6 sets. And the reason I do this, guys, is because, well, if you're in a partnered group, sometimes you have a partner who's not doing much, right? And, well, you kind of have to just give them instructions. You got to take lead. To be fair, honestly, that's the reason we do some group projects, guys, because everyone's a little bit different. And, well, you're going to run into some issues always, because people are different, and that's just the human construct that it is. So 6 sets, right? It may be actually instructions to print out and tell them. However, let's say I got all those pieces, right? I got all my dowels, and what I like to do with this, at least this model, is slowly delete them. That way, oh, that's a good piece I actually need to make. Let's take that piece. I can either copy it, doesn't really matter. Put that one over there. I'll rotate it because I need that part of the diagram. And again, I always kind of look at the top view. So again, make 2D. I can maintain layers, or even, I'd probably uncheck hidden lines in this situation. Especially if I was going to print it out. I wouldn't want to like confuse my partner. But yeah, I mean, I could do all that modeling that maybe my partner doesn't understand. And I can go, look, I just need you to make these out of this template. Awesome. So I'm just going to print that out real quick. I'm going to line up and I'm going to make some really great trusses. Maybe out of 2 different sized dowels, right? Just knowing that that it's a circle in the first place. And what better yet than to put that in Illustrator? That's already looking pretty good. Oh, you know, maybe I don't want that line. I can always ungroup it, which by default it usually is grouped with Make 2D, so keep in mind. You can't just explode it. But maybe I didn't want that piece there. Awesome. So further design it. Maybe I do want that piece there. Sweet, keep it, right? Those kinds of things. And what's nice about this too, guys, is, don't get me wrong, selecting something in Illustrator, and maybe I'll talk about this when we get there, but selecting something in Illustrator is a pain in the butt, right? Especially when you're trying to select multiple things on different sides of the page. It like puts one bounding box on the whole thing, and you're like, I have no idea what I selected. So what I'm trying to say is, do your drawing in Rhino, do your layering in Rhino, do all the thinking, all the correction, all the stuff in Rhino, but just let Illustrator do the line weight. That's it, right? But in that case, awesome template, and I could even set it to where, oh man, I need 24 of them. Is there any way that I could do that really quick? I could copy and paste, but is there an even quicker way? Array. So some of you guys may have not heard of array before, but if I need, say, 24 of them, I could do a set of 12 times 2. So I could say, well, in the X direction, I want 2, enter. In the Y direction, I want 12. Oh, not 112. 12. Oh, wait, oh my God, I think I put 112. Let's see what it does, actually. Oh my God! So as you can see, we can make a lot of them, right? Even 112, right? Maybe a happy accident, to be honest, right? Because again, that would have taken me forever if I went with the copy and paste method. And now they're actually even in a grid system. So again, playing to the tool to its best use does take some time and experience to understand these tools. But again, you should never find yourself just spending an hour copying something over and over again, right? I mean, especially when there's other ways. In some cases, and you know, this reminds me of one of the Renzo piano projects. However, it can be dangerous. Look, I mean, they're all separated pieces, so be very careful. But in this case, another thing that I can do is polar array. Or array polar, where basically it's set on a point, and in my case, maybe the center of my point is there, and maybe I need exactly, I don't know, I find that I need a radial of something that has 27 pieces. So I'll put 27, and I'll go from here to there. I need my 27 pieces, right? So again, I'm thinking of that Renzo piano project with the basket. Who has it? You need that array, that polar array, right? Because all you have to do is actually make one, and I'll actually go over y'all's project today. But anyway, just wanted to express that there's definitely much more we can do with these tools, both in 2D and 3D, to kind of help you, right? Again, definitely just want to give you guys enough tools in the tool belt to work at it, because it is going to take a week. It is going to take a partnership. It is going to take some divide and conquer, guys. Don't get me wrong, we're all adults here, and I do know when there's friction between groups, but sometimes you have to settle your differences by just going, hey, we got a job to do. Are we going to get paid for this job or not? Now, I know it's a hypothetical situation. I'm sorry I can't pay you, right? Not yet anyway. But one day you will be, and you'll be paid nicely to do so. You'll be literally paid for this amount of critical thought and skill. So I can't express that enough. In fact, you can build an entire business on it. I could give you a testimony on that, right? It's fantastic. It's a lot of work, but it's absolutely fantastic. I never thought I'd be in the position that I am today. That's for sure. But let's continue, because let's maybe think about laser cutting or printing this potentially. Honestly, a laser cutter is a printer. It just doesn't print in ink. It prints in lasers, and that's pretty cool too. But in our case, let's make sure we got all the parts. Maybe I need to build this base, and maybe I actually have a pretty interesting base that's kind of big. Maybe I actually want to fold it with cardboard. What can I do? Well, I'm going to take this piece, and I'm going to unroll surface. Have you guys ever heard of this one? I'm going to unroll surface. And in my case, I'm not going to explode it. I'll show you actually both ways and what it does, but I'm going to unexplode it. I'm going to hit enter. I forget where it goes. There it is. There's my box, completely unfolded. I don't know about you. It's beautiful, but it doesn't work, right? I mean, obviously the boxes are like on themselves, you know, for instance. So let's try that exploded. Awesome. Ah, there's something that actually looks a little bit more foldable, no? I could fold those two pieces together. I could fold the other pieces together. Some of you guys, I know when we make models, we make one piece at a time, and we glue one piece at a time, and we glue the next piece, and we kind of model it, and we get the next piece. That's cool, but it takes like years, right? Compared to something like this, where I can easily just line up pieces of the model. I could potentially print this and make it way easier for myself, at least in terms of amount of, you know, doing that with my scale all day, or accidentally getting the wrong scale and getting the wrong measurement. So again, this idea of accuracy is unroll surface, right? However, if I wanted to use this, I'd have to kind of put it together a little bit. I might have to actually move some things. So in my case, move one piece to another. And of course, my O-snap wants to be difficult today. I was watching the video back and I was like, gosh, it's just so embarrassing. It seems to actually be working a little bit better today. I tried some different settings on my video card, so we'll see what that does. To be fair, this is why you don't become a beta tester for Apple, especially in the middle of a semester. And if I haven't told you before, it's also why I give the rule of never update your OS during a semester, right? Never update the program during a semester. Why? Especially during the middle of a project, because there goes 16 weeks of work, right? So again, word to the wise is someone who definitely doesn't update their OS during the semester. But again, potentially I hope you see that I could cut this out, right? And then actually score this line, and the laser cutter, I could just fold it, right? And I just fold this box together, simply, right? To be fair, it's a pretty complex object, right, to say the very least. And if you did want to make it actually easier for yourself, you can tell it in which spots to unfold by basically exploding and getting rid of some of the faces that you don't necessarily want to build, right? So you can put these all back together, join, and you can unroll surface again. In my case, enter, and it's going to produce the same thing. Now, in my case, it is all exploded, so I would have wanted to move those parts out of the way first, but I hope you get the point, right? You can definitely use this for the laser cutter or printing. So how do we do that? Well, as you guys know, it is at a 1-to-1 scale. If I print this out, you're going to be like, wait a minute, this doesn't even fit on the paper. It's 20 feet long. I don't have 20 feet long paper. What are you, crazy? It's also that Zoolander joke, if you know what I'm talking about. It's like, how is this model for architect, or this is like a model for ants. Have you guys ever seen that clip? It's hilarious. But I do find it funny because it kind of is true. We constantly build these models for actually a different scale of observer. Anyway. So if we want to put this on some paper, there's two things we really need to know. Well, we don't have to scale anything, but we need the size of the paper or the size of the laser cutter, right? So, well, the size of the laser cutter, at least mine at home, just in case we have to use mine, because we probably will use mine still. If you guys do want a laser cut, you got to let me know, at least in advance. I would definitely almost have a finished model by Monday if that is the route you want to go. At least have what we're doing today by Monday. But for my laser cutter, it is 900 millimeters by 600 millimeters. And to be fair, that's the actual size, right? However, to scale, I'm going to need to know some things, right? In fact, it's pretty much a 24 by 36. So to be fair, if you just put it on a 24 by 36, honestly, it's about the same. So 36 by 24. And as you can see, it's pretty darn close. I think it's like 15 millimeters away, a little bit, right? But in that regard, we do need to scale some things, right? Obviously, we can't just put our lines on that little tiny box. It's just not going to fit on there, right? Now, don't get me wrong, I could scale this down, but that's going to take some converting. I might even have to find the percentage or, again, the fraction. I've got an easier way. We go the other way around. In fact, I notice I'm one of the only teachers who teaches this. Don't get me wrong, there is a paper space in Rhino, but again, I find this to be terribly easy, terribly intuitive. And to be fair, in a competition back in 2020, where it was between me and another computer graphics professor, they couldn't find the scale of the site plan, right? And they had one teacher do it and they had me do it, right? And guess whose was to scale?
The other ones.
This guy. Thank you, Angelica, for your trust and loyalty. But yeah, it was me because he relied on paper space, something that kind of takes you away from the tangibility of it, and one that actually, nope, I verified each one. I know this is the case. It has to be the case. So if this is 1-to-1, and to be fair, we can still dimension it, right? We can still, well, what is it really? Well, it's technically 44 feet. Don't get me wrong, I could calculate it. If I'm building it at 1/4 scale, I know immediately that, well, 4 feet equals an inch, right? So I could divide this and find out that it's about 11 inches. Does that make sense? So don't get me wrong, you can still dimension stuff and you can still do the calculation that your tried and true ways of graphics 1 and graphics 2. However, we need to make the paper size, and now the paper size has to be to a certain scale. So for instance, if this was a 1/4 scale, what would I do to that 24 by 36? Does anybody know? I would make basically the 24 by 36 piece of paper to the scale of 1/4. Now, what does that mean? Because if you look that up in Google, it's going to be like, you're crazy. You learned that from Verret, didn't you? Right? But what it means is I'm calculating for how many feet potentially at scale actually fits on a 24 by 36. So if somebody can, oh, I guess I have a calculator today. Wonderful. It was funny. My 90s school teacher, she was like, you'll never have a calculator in your pocket. Turns out she was wrong. Anyway, so in my case, what I need to do is, well, I have 36 inches. Well, I know that 4 feet I can potentially fit per inch. So that means 4 times 36 inches, which is 4 times 36, 144 feet. So in my case, I'm going to type in 144 feet, enter. Now I'm going to need the 24. Potentially I can fit 4 feet per inch. So 24 times 4, 96 inches. Or sorry, 96 feet. This is my 24 by 36 at 1/4 scale. So I like to definitely, I don't like doing that over and over and over and over and over again. So I'll write some text and I'll put 24 by 36 at 1/4 inch equals 1 foot. Sweet. And what's nice about that is it's too big, my bad. There we go. But if I move it around to anywhere, all my pieces are actually still to scale. They're all at 1/4 scale. How brilliant. I didn't have to change the model or accidentally mess up by switching my proportions or anything like that, right? And again, I know for some of us, if you've taken my computer graphics, this is definitely a review, right? You know how to scale some things. And in fact, actually, if you're in my current computer graphics, this is what we're doing Tuesday, right? Is you're actually getting it first in this class. But in this case, this is actually what I would print. So in my case, if I was taking this to Illustrator, is this all going to fit? Yeah, it's pretty obvious. It's not going to fit. So what would I have to do? Well, obviously, I'd get maybe the text out of there. And I'd maybe have to move some things around. I may have to, well, I'm going to put this kind of in the corner. Oh, man, I got to get this like way closer in there. And this is true for 3D printing or, laser cutting or printing. Obviously, if it's not on the page, it's not going to work, right? It's not going to get printed out. Now, is it going to work? Absolutely, right? Or at least it'll work on a 24 by 36. Now, what if what if my laser cutter, especially the school one, is only a 24 by 12? Again, what do I have to do? 24 times 4. Why? Because it's 1/4 scale. What if it was 1/2 scale?
Times 2.
Times 2. What if it was 1/8 scale? Times 8. What if it's 1/16? What if it's 1/32? See how much easier that is? Then tell me the percentage between 1/4 and 1/32 without Google. You see what I mean? So don't get me wrong, this is kind of my Verret way, and it's something that was taught to me by actually at Texas Tech from one of the other guys who was like, check this out. It's way easier. I don't know why they don't teach it. He wasn't a teacher, so he was just one of the shop guys, and he was like, check this out, But I immediately stuck to it, and I've never gotten it wrong since, right, to be fair. Which is really nice because, well, that is what's true of the paper. It kind of all started to click for me like, oh my God, at scales, the paper only holds so much space. You get it? Anyway, hopefully it's starting to click and light bulb for some of us. But yeah, if it's 24 by 12, say a different paper or a different space for the laser cutter, well, I need to do 24 times 4, which is, of course, 96 feet. Awesome. And what is 12 times 4? 48? So 48 feet. Interesting enough, these don't really have a relationship to each other. I mean, they are at the same scale, right? So they're kind of at the same 1/4 equals an inch kind of thing. However, don't be absolutely fooled. This is just a ratio that matches and makes our pieces the right size. Anyway, not to beat a dead horse, but just want to make sure that point really gets clear. However, let's move on to some two-dimensional things that I forgot to show you, such as array, right? And I think I've already kind of shown you a little bit of that, but I've already exhausted center Pompidou a little bit. I don't want to help that group too much. I want to move on to the next group just because there's some different three-dimensional things to show that I think kind of apply across the board. But also it's like, man, how do you make something like this that looks so complex? How do I even trace it? It looks so complex. Do I just sit there and draw every diamond? No way, man. That's going to take forever. So, of course, there's some tips and tricks that we can do in order to make that easier. In our case, I'm going to lock this first. That way I don't accidentally move something. And to be fair, this actually looks like from a student version. I'm not quite sure. It definitely has some thick lines. And hopefully the group themselves has, some better imagery than what I found. To be fair, I don't know if this is official. It looks like it's just kind of a student project, to be honest with you. So, there is that. However, it looks like we're going to have to fake it till we make it in some regard. And to keep in mind that this building kind of has a weird shape, right? It's kind of diagonal. So we're going to kind of get a weird feeling when we're drawing this, like, is that right? Normally I draw an orthographic view. So why is there like a little space? Well, that's because of the diagonal that's happening in some of these spaces. So again, what I'm trying to say is we might need to further investigate our piece in order to figure out what's going on in plan and section, right? So that's definitely a given. However, if it is just tracing it, let's go ahead and unlock that. My bad, locked it too soon. Make that a little bit more transparent. So I'll go to properties, little bucket, and make that a little thinner. I'm gonna stick with section today, just because, I don't know, I like sections. But in my case, I do want to start tracing the heck out of this thing. It's definitely not a bad idea to actually make a few layers first, call them walls, diagrid, especially stuff that, maybe pertain to the actual project itself. So man, my eyesight is going on a Friday. Anyway, diagrid. What else we have? Windows. We got doors. Again, I can't express enough, like, it's good to stay organized because, again, I can just select the doors layer, make it lighter. And what do you always get in studio? You get comments on categories like, hey, can you make the structure a little bit brighter? Can you make the trees a little bit lighter? And you're sitting there like selecting every tree for the next 3 hours when you could have just put it all on a single layer. That was me. That was me who spent many hours as a student, right? And of course, I learned a lot doing that. Enough so that I thought it was so important to teach you guys here at SAC, which is a huge reason why I came back, because I almost quit architecture because of this very fact. Anyway, so I didn't mean to rhyme so much there, but I did. Let's get some red. Orange is pretty easy to see, so let's get some orange. And doors layer, purple. Why not? Magenta, sorry. But let's get some of these qualities and let's see if there's an easier way to basically draw this. In fact, lo and behold, these actually are all the same diamond shape. So potentially I just have to draw one. And I guess in order to do it, I'm gonna go a little fancy with it. I mean, these are actually straight lines. So let's go ahead and do that first. To be fair, there's a couple of ways we can do this. I can either get the whole line, right, and just really go for the entire thing. And I could do it this way. So here's method one. I'm just gonna draw every line and trim away. All right, so I'll take that, boom, boom, boom. I'll just keep going as much as I can. Trying to select very similar spots, but as you can see, it's lining up with everything really well. All right, I can keep going. Boom, boom. Probably shouldn't make so many sound effects, but honestly, it's when you have a 3-year-old, you make a lot of sound effects, right? So you can communicate without using words. At least I do. And it's funny, the wife is always like, how do you talk to her so well? And I'm like, I'm not. I'm using sounds and display imagery, stuff that, because, the real reason a 3-year-old gets frustrated? Because they can't communicate what they want to tell you, right? That's why they're really frustrated. Anyway, food for thought. But that is method one, and then of course I can trim this away with, some sort of outburst line. So to be fair, and I can extend. So for instance, maybe I know that I potentially want to stop this grid at some point. So to be fair, I'm going to do it with kind of just a straight line. Meet that point right there, sweet. Meet that point right there, sweet. So don't feel like you have to like nail it perfectly, guys. Like the architect isn't going to come by. They're not going to check and be like, sir, you did it wrong, right? You know, they're not going to do that. I'm not even going to do that. I'm going to applaud you for using the technology in such a nice and critical way that hopefully by the end of this process, you're like, you know what? I know a lot more about this project, and I know a lot more about Rhino, and potentially what I can do with this program in the future. It's not extremely imperative that you learn everything there is to know about Rhino in 1 or 2 weeks, right? So what I'm trying to say is be patient with yourself, right? But in this case, I could take this piece and I can extend. I don't know if anybody's shown you an extend, but I use it like every day. And in my case, it says extend. What do you want to extend? Well, all of it. So I'm going to extend all of these lines so I don't have to sit there and do that anytime soon. And I can also trim, so I can TRIM, trim, and get all of them at once, right? I can even get my image, which I probably don't want to do so, even though that actually made something pretty cool. But like I said, you can't mess up. Edit undo is, you know, but I forgot to relock my image, so not a big deal. Bless you. So when I trim that, again, don't be the guy who's sitting there trimming every line. You know, do it in one big swath, like a man. No, I'm just kidding. There's this guy on TikTok that he's like, hey, don't let anybody in your life ruin your day. Do it yourself. Be a man, right? He's hilarious. I just find it, he's so monotone and like, you know, just zero character. Anyway, but let's continue. Oh, accidentally trimmed too much. Let's continue at least this first method, which would be, I call kind of just the, you know, the trim and extend method. But just rebuild the grid, right? I mean, nothing wrong with that. Another way to go about it, since we have a pretty congruent system here, I'll go ahead and make a copy real quick. So unlock, let's get a copy here. Unlock my stuff. Okay, there we go. Copy. So that was kind of the first method. Obviously, in this case, I could take actually all of these, right? And what could I do? Anybody know? How do I get the other side? Now flip it. Mirror. Very good. So I can mirror it. And obviously I'd want to mirror it from one of those locations. But dang, I got all my grid. Now don't get me wrong, it's going to be a field day doing this next part, right? I can trim, but oh no. Here's where this method fails. Oh no, I got to do this? That sounds awful. This is going to take forever. In fact, I could go a little faster and go like that. But probably not ideal, right? So don't get me wrong, not every method is going to work for every situation, right? So just keep that in mind. Like, don't be like, sir, you told me to do this, man, right? Like, it's not my fault that you are not, you know, reinventing the wheel here. But in this sense, right, another thing that we could do is, well, look, I can just draw one. Wait, let me try that out. I'm just going to draw this one. I'm going to put it over what I already have and actually fill it, right? Because I do see that these are a little bit curvilinear. To be fair, I could do that a couple ways too. I could draw a circle, or I could start to get the curvilinearness, start to line things up and do that. I mean, that's one way. That's a horrible way. So in my case, let's lock that back image so I don't accidentally delete stuff. Another way I could do it is just fill it, right? So in my case, fill it. I don't actually know the dimension, so I'm just going to have to guess it. I'm going to say 12 inches at first. Click, click. I think it's a little smaller than 12 inches, right? Let's try that again. Let's go with 9 inches. No, it's going to be smaller, guys. Smaller. Even 9 inches. I'm going to say 6 inches is actually probably going to be it. 6 inches. Keep in mind, this is in Japan, so I'm pretty sure they use imperial, but that's looking pretty good. Let's continue that. Awesome. Spacebar. When you hit spacebar, it reenacts the same command. I don't know if I said that last time. But now what can I do? Well, first join it so I don't accidentally put a bunch of parts everywhere. But I can array it, right? And I can go actually multiple. To be fair, I don't know if it works in a diagonal position. I'd have to rotate this and use my X and Y because array only uses X and Y. However, what might be easier is to do this in in pieces, right? So I'm going to take that, bam, bam. Okay, take all 4, copy. To be fair, I could actually use pieces that I already know, right? I can even hold shift and keep them congruent. Not gonna lie, it's a little easier. Well, I don't want to do that all over and over again. Again, I could take this whole piece. Again, copying is its forte, right? The ability to duplicate in this program is far beyond the human, and it's very obvious, right? A lot of people think artificial intelligence is going to take our jobs, but that's just not true, guys. What it will take is our creativity if we don't use it. But not too shabby, right? Obviously, I can line up with other pieces, and obviously, I could still trim it as well. So again, you might have something that's... Sorry? Yeah, it definitely kind of has the fish character to it, right? I like the excitement, though. It looks like a fish. But yeah, obviously we can get rid of the things and parts that we don't need, and we can further trim them. I wish I still had, oh, I do still have that line. Sweet, copy. Because why would I want to trace that again? Obviously, this is why you always make a copy, right? So you never have to do anything twice. Don't get me wrong, you're going to have to do things like 5 times. But you know what? That's part of the learning process. Keep in mind, trim doesn't trim things that don't touch the extents, right? So it's just never going to trim this, right? It's not touching that extent. Don't know if anybody needed that pointed out, but I remember struggling for a while, like, why won't it trim? Well, it's not touching it, Chris. You know, those kinds of things. You just have to go back and delete them. But again, pretty successful in terms of that, at least in terms of showing 2 different methods of getting the exact same thing, right? To be fair, I think the second method wins in this case, right? Only because that diagonal stays the same. Now, don't get me wrong, some projects are not like this and everything's different. Just trace it, right? And work with it, right? Now, in my case, the next thing I might want to show or implore is definitely, has Longoria gone over poché or hatching? Hatching, no? Bucket tool in Illustrator or Rhino?
In Illustrator.
Gotcha.
And the pen tool as well.
Okay, good. And to be fair, like I said, I hate this saying, but there is like 15 ways to skin an animal, right? Just because I do it one way or second way or a different way, there's like still 8 other ways I just didn't even show you. And to be fair, you might find them on your own, and please share the wealth. If you find it only takes 3 clicks instead of 15, let me know, because I don't want to waste my time either, right? That's of course why we do this in a studio. However, to be fair, let's go over hatching because it's super useful. And let's get that piece. Hey, oh my gosh, you know, I'm making a connection here. I think the same diamond's being used. Oh my gosh, let's test this theory. Oh, Dillard and Scafidio. Wait, Herzog and Demeron. You know what I mean? Like they weren't reinventing the wheel even. They were using their exact shapes. And don't get me wrong, these are the kinds of discoveries I want you to notice about your precedent. Because that's how your project should be designed. It should be based and influenced on like almost like a fractal of itself, self-conceptualized, if you will. However, that's looking pretty good, pretty easy. I'm going to go ahead and offset that to get the thickness. So offset. Now, to be fair, I don't know the thickness of this, so I can always hit distance or the letter D on Windows. And I can select the distance I want and just click. And to be completely honest, my O-snap is like on fire today. I love it. Anyway, it was giving me such a hard time. But I do want to trim away some of these other pieces I don't need. And get rid of the ones that I don't necessarily need. And I definitely want to draw the rest. Don't get me wrong, I'm getting a really big line here, but I'm just going to boil it down to 1. After all, it's my drawing. It's not like Herzog and Demeron is going to come by anytime soon. Can you imagine they just pull up? Anyway, I would be amazed. Honestly, they do at those other universities that you're going to go to, like Texas Tech, U of H. They'll invite, like when we were at Texas Tech, they invited Tom Main. Do you guys know who Tom Main is? You will by the end of your architecture career. Anyway, no, he's kind of overhyped Starchitect, who's at least still alive. But yeah, he came by to Texas Tech and he gave a lecture for an hour. It was amazing. Honestly, one of the best lectures we've had at San Antonio College was Bill Bao. which she was just incredible. Do you remember that one? Man, she was. It was at Trinity, but they paid $8,000 just to have her talk. Can you imagine? I want $8,000 just for talking. You know what I mean? Don't you? So again, what I'm trying to say is this knowledge. Knowledge is power, guys. There's a reason why they say that. But I'm just gonna fake it till I make it and trace it. I'm gonna hold shift when you need a straight line. And to be fair, I can go around these things. Doesn't matter. And I kind of want to line up to that, so that's looking pretty sweet. Enter. And I definitely want to chop that out, so trim. And trim out the inside pieces that I don't need. To be fair, it is kind of hard to see, and I do keep saying to be fair. I apologize. Like I said, I do a lot of this in improv, guys, so instead of saying all the time, I started saying to be fair, right? But actually starting to come about. You see it? Definitely not too shabby. However, it'll be definitely made a different way modeling wise, which is kind of what I want to talk about next. Well, let's go over the hatching portion. Sorry. Let's hide something. So if you type hide on something, you can hide it. If you type show, it'll bring it back into place. I don't know if anybody needed to tell you that, but I find it so useful to just hide something. You can also turn off the layer itself, but sometimes it's easier to see something when you can just hide stuff. And again, pretty nice. But if I do want to hatch something, typically I select everything in question that I potentially may or may not hatch, right? I know that sounds vague, but hear me out. When I type in hatch, there's basically something called a boundary mode. So by default, it goes, hey, is this what you want? And it's like, no, that is not what I want, right? That is the opposite of what I want. So in my case, if you click on this box that says boundary, it should stop and it should go, hey, what do you want, Chris, right? Or what do you want, student? And in my case, I just want the inside of there. Sweet. And maybe I want potentially something else, right? Maybe I wanted that one, that one, that one, and that one. Sweet. I'm gonna hit enter. And then it's gonna go, okay, well, now that you got the selection you want, how do you want me to show you? Well, most of the time when we poche something, it's solid, right? However, if you've ever been in a graphics 2 course, you know that you could spend hours doing that, don't you? No longer do you have to, right? In fact, we can even put it at a 45-degree angle and call it a day. Well, not a scale, my bad. 45-degree angle all day. No longer do you have to waste time hatching, but that doesn't mean we have to get rid of the wonderful qualities that we built doing analog. In fact, I would even go a step further, explode this, and make it my own even, right? I'd move a little bit of line, give it that Toy Story 4 effect. I'm serious. Like, you guys wonder, like, sometimes when I do that fooling, when Bohuslav thinks that it's a real drawing, it's because his mind picked up that, oh, the poche isn't perfect. It must be analog. Seriously, this is how the mind works. Have you guys ever seen, like, one of those 2020 shows where they go, they do, like, a test on, like, it's almost like a psychology test on, like, the public, and some guy fakes stealing somebody's purse, and they see if the public will react, or if they'll even say anything, or, if they come up to him, they go, what shirt was the guy wearing who stole the purse? And it was like, it was a blue shirt. It was definitely a blue shirt. I know, 100%, I know it was a blue shirt. Turns out the guy was wearing green. You see what I mean? So what I'm trying to say is, even in the heat of the moment, or when passing or observing, especially architectural work, it's very easy to have the mind interpretate something that it doesn't actually see, especially when it's a little sketchy and not so perfect. However, guess what happens when there's something that's been digitally drawn? It looks perfect. It looks finished. It looks off-putting. It looks unhuman. In fact, some of you guys may realize this. If you see a piece of artwork, you might go, oh, I like that. And then somebody goes, hey, that's been done by AI. And you're like, what? I know, I thought I liked this piece. You know what I mean? But it's really changed the way I feel about this art piece, even though the art piece didn't change at all. However, inversely, if I designed this bridge, but I checked it with AI, people's appreciation goes up. Why? Because now it feels like it's been double-checked, triple-checked, quadruple-checked professionally. So don't get me wrong, I don't think people like technology when it comes to art. Seriously, at least in my 2 cents and professionalism, I don't think people like the fact that, oh, you just clicked some buttons and you made some artwork. Honestly, we get some of that same repertoire or same kind of mentality in architecture. Again, there's a reason why this school is one of the most traditional and honestly kind of infamous, because we still teach analog drawing and they know why we're good. It's because we still teach the traditional way. However, what I'm trying to say, guys, the real secret to digital drawing is what we're doing here in the first place. So if you, in the back of your mind, if you're thinking, man, I'm better at drafting, you are the one I want to see in 3 years from now when you're doing your digital work, because I know it'll be better than the rest. Because it does take a hand-mind connection to actually understand the computer better than the people who just calculate stuff and produce, right? It takes going in here and going, I know the mind of Bosov, he's going to see imperfection, so I'm going to add a little bit of imperfection. You see what I'm saying? Pause Toy Story 4 for a moment. Next time you're watching a Pixar movie, pause it and notice how much detail is in every single shot. The dirt on Wally's legs, this random space debris when you see something in Wally, or even the scratch marks on what's her name, the sheep lady in Toy Story, Bo Peep, right? I mean, look at her in Toy Story 4. She is like beat up. I know, I get it, she's a lost toy, but in Toy Story 1, she's like super perfect. Like, it looks like it was calculated rather than sculpted and built. So again, don't want to take away too much from her time. But yeah, definitely not too shabby for two-dimensional stuff. However, let's now talk some three-dimensional stuff, especially if I was going to make it for this project. Some of the things that I might do to achieve it was, well, I might just take a look at it. To be fair, I know in this project, there actually is an unfolded diagram. Ellis, do you remember that one? Where it shows all the windows, it shows even the reflections of where it would be. Now, don't get me wrong, I would actually just trace that, right? I'd get a polyline, I'd bring in that diagram, and I would literally just trace it real quick and be like, oh my God, here's all the pieces I need, right? You know, like, this is awesome. You know, all I got to do is take this piece, that piece, and I just got to unroll it back together. Now, to be fair, I couldn't find that image, and I just didn't have enough time to get to it, so I'm going to kind of fake it till I make it today based on at least this floor plan, right? So I know it's not exactly what you guys will do, but this could easily be a step that you take in order to potentially 3D print this. So in my case, I need something of a geometry, so I'm just going to get the outside of it. Again, always starts with the two-dimensional element. So, tracing it, we'll take that piece, curve, and let's get it out of there. And to be fair, I could take each piece and just line them up and loft them together, but yeah, I kind of want to do it harder today. So in my case, and I got a lot going on up here, so I'm going to hide that real quick. I can always type in show and bring it back, no big deal. But I kind of want to build this in a three-dimensional way, right? Because why not? So I can take this piece, I might have to actually look and refer to each section and each piece, and again, in y'all's case, just build the piece and then roll it back together, right? I mean, there's no re-roll command, but potentially you can kind of move each side until they all touch, right? But let's say I needed to surface it, sweet. So I can use a 4-point or 3-point surface, and I can go click, 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 make a surface, enter again. Let's get another surface in there. Enter, and I can basically put those two together. So I can join them, sweet. Now I've got a surface that I can mess with, right? Now that's really just my floor plan, so I do need to build kind of the rest of what's going on. To be fair, I'm not Herzog and Demeron. I don't know this project as well as they do, or even maybe arguably even with our group panelists. So I'm just gonna fake it till I make it and just draw something real quick. So in my case, I'm just gonna, I think it's fair to assume that they probably go up vertically. So I'm gonna hold shift in my vertical view. Awesome. And I'm gonna go across, right? But then I'm also gonna hold shift and keep it up. And it won't let me, never mind. That's okay. I'll take that piece and just bring up this point. A lot higher than I thought, so I'm gonna take that down. And again, when you click on something, it does activate the points. If you don't see the points, do function F10. That releases all points, right? Not releases, but shows all points, right? Just in case you click on something and it's not necessarily showing the points. It may not have points to show, but yeah, function F10 will definitely show you the points if they do exist. Now in my case, this object's looking a little tall, so let's bring that back down to reality. There we go. And let's just build it by scratch, almost like building a wireframe model, right, to say the very least. Let's isolate on that, and let's build one line at a time. So line to line. So glad my OSnap is working today. So much better of an experience. But I'm also just going to fake it till I make it and probably copy another one. So let's get that one. Doot. Doot. And doot. As you can see, I'm kind of building that geometry. Again, you should know your geometry better than I do today. And it's probably going to look nothing like the actual project. Oh, I'm sorry. But for the most part, it will still be the same tasks or still same commands. So hopefully helpful. But as you can see, Smart Track isn't helping me too much. And just in case you're wondering why I kind of go to a point and then kind of fly through it, see how it kind of does stuff like that? That gray line is definitely the Smart Track. And if you notice yours isn't on, please put it on because it is great. And it's of course in right next to the gumball section. However, you can also just use another view if it's not going straight for you. So just click and click, enter. Let's do my next one. I think it goes up a little bit more, I'm not sure. It goes up, down. And yeah, it is kind of weird that I'm working in multiple viewports, and that will take some time, I'm not gonna lie. But for the most part, that's looking pretty sweet. Get another line in there. Awesome. And we'll fake it till we make it. Let's just say that's what the building does. Alright, for the most part. I know that's not exactly what it does, but not too shabby, not too bad. So the first thing we can do is turn this into an actual block or an actual surface. To be fair, it really is just like a wireframe. And that might be something I need for a diagram, right? I could potentially make 2D out of this as well, and it's going to maintain that unique quality that it has. I can't tell you how many times that I've made diagrams, I draw them first, but then I'll even scan my sketch, put it in Rhino, and kind of trace it up to make it a little, more finished look, more digital. But that's looking pretty good. Again, I can take my 3 or 4 point surfaces and basically click on each one. Again, spacebar. And keep going. Spacebar. And keep going. Not too shabby. Yeah, it's 3 or 4 point surface. You'll also notice that all the commands in Rhino, they don't have spaces in them, right? They're really kind of like surface edge is like one word in this program, unfortunately. But yeah, basically just building the whole piece. Pretty iconic. Now I'm going to take all of that, I'm going to join it. And if I did everything correctly, I should get a solid piece. Once I have that solid piece though, obviously what I was doing this for was so that I can create that grid system that goes around this whole thing. To be fair, well, I can use what is called contour. So just like contours of a map or topography, and to be fair, this is what I use to turn stuff into topography as well. So I'll hit contour. And in my case, I might need a couple of views for this, especially since it's at a certain angle. And I might want to match that angle, so I'm going to show my pieces again. And maybe get it close by. So I'm going to put this shape a little bit over here. Because I do want to kind of match the same angles. And to be fair, this is probably the most true angle because it's still kind of flat with the page. Whereas this one's not really a true angle, right? That's more of that sloped roof area. So I definitely don't want to base it off of that. But in my case, I'm going to contour. and basically decide a direction first. So it's going to say contour plane base point. So in my case, that doesn't really matter where the base point is, but in my case, I'm just going to select something familiar and select the bottom corner, right? At least in that general area. Now I'm going to take that and basically follow the direction of the building. In my case, it is diagonal, so I'd either follow a perfect 45 this way or that way. In my case, I'll just fake it till I make it. That'll be the direction. The distance between contours, well, in my case, I can actually click and give the distance. So in my case, I want the distance between the midpoint of here and the midpoint of there, right? Voila, look what I did. It made all these little grids, right, for my piece. Now if I hide that, there's the first set of grids. See that? Let's do the second set. So I'm going to take the same thing. I'm going to take the exact same view. Now it is important that I do it in the same view, otherwise, well, that angle might not match up. So I'm going to contour again. Awesome. I'm going to make sure it doesn't really matter on the base point. Like I said, as long as you select the object in question, it's going to choose that object, so it doesn't even matter where the base point is. It's only important for the direction of what's going on. In my case, I want it to be a similar path or direction. So I could go with that 45, or in my case, maybe that slight degree, but I'm going to try and keep it orthogonal. Awesome. And I want to keep the same distance, and it's going to maintain the same distance. So enter. And as you can see, I can get my entire piece. In fact, I'm going to make this one slightly smaller so that we even start to get kind of a three-dimensionality to it. To be fair, I can hide it real quick to make that a little bit easier. I hide that one real quick. And for the most part, we definitely get it in certain areas. Now, for the sake of this project, obviously I'm just going to go with the spot where it's working the most. And in my case, it doesn't seem to resolve too well in that corner, right? It could be my angles that I'm choosing. But at the end of the day, nobody's going to check, guys, not even me. Like, oh, I don't think you got the exact same diagrid. But at least you're trying. At least you're trying to go for this piece. But right now, it's still kind of a wireframe 1980s video game going on. So I'm going to take the entire thing, and I'm going to either pipe it or sweep it, right? To be fair, I could sweep this, but it is going to take a little while. So I'm just going to go ahead and pipe it for today. We'll give it a certain thickness of, I don't know, 6 inches. And just like that, we have our diagrid. Little basket based on that shape. Definitely arguably close. Now don't get me wrong, it didn't work on this side, probably wouldn't take that side, right? To say the very least. If I wanted to cut this, however, one thing that I can do is called a clipping plane. Has anybody gone over clipping plane yet? I was gonna say, usually that one's kind of at the end of the road. Check out clipping plane. So I'm gonna type in clipping plane, it's gonna say, hey, the first corner of your rectangle. Okay, well, I definitely want to cut it in sections, so I'm going to go like this. Awesome. I think I have shown my computer graphics clipping plane.
Is this the part where, like, the floor corner?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So in my case, it's not showing anything because it's only going to show in my top view. So when I click on clipping plane, I need to make sure that each view is enacted, right? So in my case, oh, there it is, way over here. And I'm going to put it towards my model, which is about over here. So it clips it, and it actually turns it into a section. So that would be the potential part that I want to 3D print, no? Oh, well, maybe not exactly that part. So maybe I'm going to rotate it a little bit. Maybe that's the piece I want. Oh, that's cool. It made a perfect section for me. Right? Literally tells me how to draw it in section now. So potentially this could be the piece that I want to 3D print, and of course start to put some floors in it. So, I mean, don't get me wrong, we just made the cage, and yeah, I know it's kind of hard to look at, but, and to be fair, it could be a lot better, right? I'm not gonna lie. But that's looking pretty good actually from the top. So I'd probably cut it from here, right? If it were me, and just kind of, if we want to make a section model, yeah, we definitely can in this case. But maybe I need to make the floors, and maybe obviously I need to make the rest of the pieces. So show the rest of my piece. And it looks like I still need to, get kind of those big pieces. I think they're in there somewhere, like those, right? Those guys, and I'd still want to get all the floors. So I might actually want to take this piece, not that piece, this piece. That. And I may want to extrude it and turn it into a floor. So I can take that piece. Sorry, it's getting hard to look at. I understand. Put that over there. You can also extrude something no matter what shape it is and turn it into a floor, and maybe that floor is, I don't know, 12 inches. And maybe it's a crazy floor, and maybe we got like, I don't know, 6 of them. To be fair, I should make this maybe in the other view. So I can take that piece, rotate it, and go, where is it? Okay, there it is. It's right here. Oh. I'm going to take this piece. I'm going to line it up maybe with my section. Oh, there's my section. Okay, yeah. That's going to be 1. Right? Maybe that's going to be 2, 3, 4. I don't know. There's like 5 or 6 in there. You guys know probably better than I do. Well, let's get some of those layers. There's the pieces, or kind of what we need, but as you know, in this project it kind of gets subtracted in different areas, right? So we might have to, if you really want to build the model per se, right, we might have to recognize the openings that we're actually going to use. So for instance, I may want to take one of those pieces, and when it happens on the certain floor, maybe I even take that piece, right? In my case, I gotta oh, I'm in a perspective. That's fine. Am I in perspective? Okay, yeah. I meant to be in the top view. My bad. But I may need to grab some of these things. So for instance, like let's say that's level 1. Okay, well maybe that's the hole, but I can see that it's actually getting cut away from. So in my case, let's do that. And as you can see, again, no matter what, we have to trace everything, whether we want to build it. And honestly, for this project, we have to trace it, right? At least for the sake of two-dimensional drawing. But let's say that was good. Let's say that's the floor. I know that's not exactly the floor, to be fair. But let's say that it was, right? That piece. But I could go ahead and wire cut it from my floor, right? So for instance, I take that floors, those floors, take that right there, and I'll take that shape that I drew, right, like that piece, and wire cut it, right? Especially an odd piece, like, I mean, don't get me wrong, it doesn't actually look like that, but just in case it did, right, we could totally cut away from it. Pretty close. So again, wire cut, piece. Oh no, wrong direction. That's okay. Z direction, cut straight through it. And voila. Alright, we get rid of this piece. And we have that one left over. So again, potentially, I know a lot of these are kind of, you look at a Starchitect's work and you start to just be like, I'm not this guy, I'm not this gal, I can't do this, right? I hope that's not your first take, right? Because that was definitely my take. When I saw Renzo Piano's work, I'm like, man, I'll never be an architect. This guy's amazing, right? But it wasn't until my master's program that I was like, I got this, man. Like, I could totally go out and do this now, right? Especially with these kind of skill sets. But again, I know we're kind of rounding towards the end, and I do want to have enough time to ask questions. So at least in terms of today, I'll let this be part 2, and I'll probably do another part, at least more Illustrator stuff. And I know Longoria is kind of already going over that. So the last thing I really wanted to talk about was just how to put it on a 36 by 50 anyway, and that's honestly pretty easy. And to be fair, I kind of went over it with the 24 by 36 method. It's calculated the exact same way, except now you do a 36 by 50, right? And then calculate that scale. So you'd have to know what scale you're using your floor plan and section in. And I do recommend that those be the same scale, by the way. Some of you guys were asking me that last time. I was like, Why would you have a different floor plan in a big section or a small section in a big floor plan? Anyway, but it didn't make any sense. Anyway, before I end the recording though, is there any major questions that came up? Or are you struggling with something that the rest of the class might be struggling with? Emily.
I forgot if you mentioned this, like, the other class, but are we also supposed to include, like, the foundation of the building in the physical model
Yes.
as well? Okay.
Yeah, so you definitely want to hold it to something, and that base. So the question, at least for the recording, because I don't know if it can pick you up, the question is, do we need to make a base for this model? Yes, right? It needs to attach to something, and let's face it, all of our projects are on the ground, so there should be no issue there. However, you don't necessarily have to make all the underground craziness, right? Like particularly in this model, for instance, we see a lot of underground craziness. You don't have to build all that. You can, of course, simplify that to where basically we have a building and, just to kind of draw it out real quick. Because it is a good question. And yeah, I know that's kind of daunting in itself to look at. It could be definitely simplified. So for instance, their model might be something more like this, where it just goes to the edge.
Oh no, mine goes underground.
Well, that's what I mean. Like, don't get me wrong. Here's option 1. Here's my base. You know what I mean? And that just sits inside. Another option, if I wanted to go, a step in the right direction, I'd maybe get a little bit more advanced with it and be like, well, maybe I kind of want that space in between,
Oh.
And don't get me wrong, for the drawing, I've obviously just trace it. But for the model, you can definitely simplify, right? Maybe it's simplified like this. You don't necessarily have to put all the pylons or, anything like that, all the pier beam systems. But it could definitely be simplified to answer your question. And that's a great question. Thank you for asking it, because I know everybody has that exact same question. But yeah, the base can still be advanced too. Good stuff. Any other questions, guys? Great question, Emily.
Oh, also,
Yep.
when is the deadline to let me know for laser? Monday.
Monday. So if you do want a laser cut, you need to at least trace the pieces and parts and at least get a confirmation with me. And I'll go over some special instructions if you do want a laser cut. It's not required that you laser cut, guys. The reason, again, for the digital model is A, so that you can potentially 3D print if you want to. B, so you can laser cut if you potentially want to. And or 3, so you can have a template to physically make the model too. Because I know some of us have some pretty complex stuff, right? And to be fair, I'm thinking of the airport that you guys are doing. Model it out, unfold it, print it out, fold it back together. You see what I'm saying? Or build it up in strips. Those kinds of things too. Good questions though so far. Anything else, guys? Obviously, we'll have part 3, the final part, on Monday. And that'll be, honestly, probably a little just a recap of certain questions and things like that. It'll probably be the shorter of the 3. Sound good? Learn a lot? Too fast? Really appreciate some of you guys taking notes and writing things down. Thank you, Felix. It means a lot to me when you guys are actually paying attention to this, because I would have died for something like this when I was learning these programs. Because you had to sit there and teach yourself until 6 in the morning, and you're like, I still don't know if I got it. And I didn't, honestly. I learned that I was building these terrible habits. So if there's anything I hope that I'm helping with is actually build some decent habits on this program. That way you don't fall into the slump of 3-hour work when you don't have to. So, anyway, question?
This is going on YouTube, right?
Yes, it will be on YouTube. No other questions, guys?
No.
I'll end the recording for today.